Good evening and welcome to the Sleep to Law series. Tonight, we'll talk about The Silence of the Lambs, exploring the chilling dynamic between a rookie agent and a brilliant incarcerated psychiatrist set against the backdrop of a desperate hunt for a serial killer. If you'd like, subscribe or comment to help us grow. As a new channel, every member who joins is helping to build this library of lore from the ground up. If you want to support these deep dives, click the join button below. Before we begin, I have a question for you. When you meet someone new, do you trust your gut instinct about them immediately, or do you wait to get to know them better? Comment your answer below. Now, let us descend into the silence. The silence of the lambs. The story begins not with a scream, but with the muffled quiet of the FBI Academy at Quantico. The behavioral science section, the division tasked with the impossible job of understanding the serial killer, is located on the bottom floor, half buried in the earth. It is a fitting architectural metaphor. To hunt monsters, one must be willing to descend. Clarice Starling, a trainee, is summoned here, flushed from a combat simulation in the woods. She is young, disciplined, and carries the scent of gun smoke on her hands, a sensory detail that marks her as a warrior in training, even as she attempts to present a polished veneer to her superiors. She meets Section Chief Jack Crawford, a legend in the Bureau. But the man before her is not the robust engineer of days past. He is thinning, haunted, a man appearing to molt within his own clothes. The psychological weight of the behavioral science section is visible on him. They are catching hell, as the papers say, likely due to the rampage of a killer dubbed Buffalo Bill. But Crawford isn't calling Starling in for Bill, not directly. He has an errand, a poisoned chalice disguised as a clerical task. He wants her to interview the one monster the FBI cannot crack, Dr. Hannibal Lecter. This assignment is framed as a simple data collection for the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, or VICAP. They want to build a database of serial killer psychology. But there is a subtext here. Crawford is using Starling as bait. He admits he has no one left to send. He warns her strictly, offer no personal information. Lecter is a psychiatrist, a man who dismantles the human mind with the same precision he used to dismantle his victims. If he gets inside her head, the damage could be permanent. The warning establishes the central tension of the narrative. This is not a physical battle, but a duel of wits, where the penalty for losing is the loss of oneself. Starling travels to the Baltimore State Hospital for the criminally insane. Here we meet Dr. Frederick Chilton, the administrator. Chilton is the archetype of the petty bureaucrat, vain, incompetent, and deeply resentful of his famous captive. He is a man who studies the abyss from the safety of a viewing deck. Mistaking his proximity to monsters for superiority, he subjects Starling to a clumsy, lecherous gaze, a precursor to the more dangerous, penetrating gaze she will soon face. He warns her of Lecter's physical danger, recounting an incident where the doctor maimed a nurse merely to get at her tongue, all while his pulse never rose above 85. This detail transforms Lecter from a mere killer into something post-human, a creature of absolute physiological control. The descent into the asylum is a journey into the underworld. Starling passes through heavy steel gates, leaving natural light behind. The air grows thick with the smell of institutional cleaner and distant ragged shouting. It is a sensory assault designed to break the spirit. She passes the cell of a prisoner named Miggs, a creature of pure chaotic impulse, who hisses a vile sexual remark at her. It is an act of crude hostility that stands in stark contrast to the refined horror waiting at the end of the corridor. Dr. Lecter's cell is unique. It is fronted by bars, but also a secondary barrier, a nylon net intended to stop him from spitting or throwing objects. But inside, the cell is a sanctuary of culture. Dr. Hannibal Lecter sits reading Italian Vogue. He is small, sleek, and possesses a terrifying stillness. When he looks at Starling, she feels the physical sensation of his gaze as if it is humming. He has 6 fingers on his left hand, a physical anomaly that marks him as distinct, almost mythological. The conversation that follows is a masterclass in psychological domination. Lecter immediately sees through Starling's credentials. He dissects her not with a knife, but with observation. He comments on her scent, or lack thereof, identifying her skin cream. He mocks her attempt to use a standard questionnaire to classify him, dismissing the FBI's binary of organized and disorganized killers as simplistic nonsense. He is the ultimate elitist, finding the very concept of quantification offensive. However, the dynamic shifts when Lecter turns his high-powered perception onto Starling herself. He dismantles her social mask. He identifies her cheap shoes and her good handbag, deducing her background as a frantic attempt to escape a poor, rural upbringing. He paints a brutal picture of her, a well-scrubbed, hustling rube, desperate to shed the accent of her West Virginia or Oklahoma ancestors. He mocks her aspirations, her tacky jewelry, and her fear of being common. This is the horror of Hannibal Lecter. He does not just kill you. He forces you to see the parts of yourself you hate the most. Starling, however, displays a resilience that surprises him. She acknowledges the sting of his words, but challenges him to turn that perception inward. It is a moment of profound bravery. She refuses to crumble, but the interview is cut short. Lecter, bored with the mundane, dismisses her. As Starling retreats, defeated, the chaotic inmate Miggs flings semen at her. It is a moment of supreme degradation. But this act of rudeness triggers something in Lecter. To the good doctor, discourtesy is unspeakably ugly, perhaps worse than murder. In a twist of dark chivalry, he calls Starling back. He will not fill out her questionnaire, but he offers her a valentine. He tells her to look for a car belonging to one of his former victims, a man named Raspail. It is a clue, a crumb, from the table of the dark god. Starling leaves the asylum, shaken. The psychological residue of the encounter clings to her. She attempts to wash it away, both metaphorically and literally, but the image of Lecter and his piercing insights remains. We see her vulnerability here. Beneath the FBI windbreaker, she is just a young woman trying to survive in a world of monsters. She begins to investigate the lead. She learns that Raspail was a flautist with the Baltimore Philharmonic and the 9th victim of Lecter. The details of his death are grotesque, his heart pierced, his thymus and pancreas removed. These organs, known culinarily as sweetbreads, were likely served by Lecter to the board of the orchestra. It is a macabre joke, a testament to Lecter's cannibalistic wit. While Starling hunts for the car, the narrative shifts briefly to Jack Crawford. We see him at home, and the source of his haunted appearance is revealed. His wife, Bella, is comatose, dying. Crawford tends to her with the tenderness of a man losing his entire world. He sleeps in a hospital bed next to hers. This glimpse into his private hell humanizes him. His stoicism at the office is a mask for a profound, quiet grief. It also explains his urgency. He is a man fighting death on 2 fronts: the slow death of his wife and the violent death dealing of Buffalo Bill. Starling's investigation into the car is a procedural slog, grounding the horror in reality. She battles the bureaucracy of the DMV and probate courts. She traces the vehicle through serial numbers and recalls, eventually finding that the car Lecter hinted at, Raspail's daily driver, was crushed into a cube in Arkansas years ago. It seems like a dead end, a trick played by the doctor. However, upon reporting this failure to Crawford, she learns 2 things. First, Miggs is dead. Sometime during the night, Lecter whispered to him. The suggestion was so potent, the psychological manipulation so absolute, that Miggs swallowed his own tongue. Lecter has killed from within a cage, using only words. This elevates the threat level drastically. He is not safe, even behind bars and nets. Second, Crawford corrects Starling's assumption. Raspail was a collector. The crushed car was not the only vehicle. Armed with this new perspective, Starling tracks down Raspail's executor, a lawyer named Everett Yao. They venture to a storage facility called Split City Mini Storage. The setting is bleak, a wind-swept graveyard of divorced possessions and forgotten secrets. It is night, raining, and the atmosphere is thick with dread. The storage unit, number 31, has not been opened in 5 years. Starling forces the door open with a jack. The sensory details here are crucial to the building suspense. The smell of dry rot, the rustle of nesting mice, the damp. Inside, she finds a 1938 Packard limousine, a relic of a bygone era covered in dust and cobwebs. It is a time capsule of death. Starling must crawl under the garage door, entering the tomb. She's alone in the dark, save for the nervous lawyer outside. The interior of the garage is a maze of boxes and spiderwebs. She approaches the car, wiping the dust from the window. Inside, she sees a tableau frozen in time. There are old valentines scattered on the seat, and in the back, a figure. She breaks into the car. The smell of decay and chemicals hits her, triggering a latent memory. The figure in the back seat is a mannequin dressed in formal evening wear. But on the parcel shelf, covered by a velvet hood, is something else. Starling removes the hood. Beneath it is a large laboratory jar. Floating inside, preserved in alcohol that has slowly evaporated, is a severed human head. It is a grotesque discovery, the skin grey, the tongue protruding. The eyes are clouded, staring blindly at her. This is the physical manifestation of Lecter's Valentine. The scene is interrupted by a news crew, the modern vultures of tragedy. Starling, despite her fear and her status as a trainee, takes command. She physically intimidates the cameraman who tries to film under the door, asserting her authority. It is a moment of growth. The trial by fire has hardened her. Starling returns to the asylum to confront Lecter. The ward is dark now, a punishment for the other inmates due to Miggs's suicide. The atmosphere is oppressive, the silence heavy. Lecter is waiting. He is pleased that she found his gift. In the shadows, they discuss the head. Lecter reveals it belonged to a Scandinavian sailor named Klaus, a lover of Raspail. He spins a tale of Raspail's romantic obsession and subsequent murder of the sailor, though Lecter implies Raspail was too weak for the physical act, suggesting a more banal, erotic asphyxia. Raspail, unable to part with his lover, kept the head. It is a glimpse into the sordid, pathetic lives of Lecter's victims, filtered through his own cynical amusement. But the conversation shifts. The game of quid pro quo truly begins. Lecter admits he lied about the car to test her, and he lied about Miggs to amuse himself. He probes her relationship with Crawford, asking if the older man desires her sexually. Starling deflects, refusing to be rattled. She turns the conversation back to the trade. Lecter is tired of his cage. He wants a view. He wants to see a tree or water. He offers a bargain. He will help catch Buffalo Bill, the skinner of women, in exchange for a transfer to a federal institution with a window. He drops a single, tantalizing profile note. Buffalo Bill has a 2-story house. He knows this, he claims, without ever seeing the file. The section ends with Lecter turning out his light, plunging Starling into darkness. He has given her a breadcrumb, but the path leads deeper into the forest. The relationship is established. He is the teacher, she is the student, and the subject is the darkness in the human soul. The narrative arc of these first 9 chapters serves as a perfect prologue to horror. We move from the sterile, deceptive safety of the academy to the grotesque theatricality of the asylum, and finally to the grim reality of a severed head in a garage. What makes this introduction so compelling is the immediate establishment of psychological stakes. Most horror relies on the fear of death. The Silence of the Lambs relies on the fear of being known. When Lecter looks at Starling, he does not threaten her life. He threatens her identity, He exposes the fragility of her self-construction. This is why the interaction is so memorable. We are all wearing masks, and Lecter is the man who can talk them off our faces. Furthermore, the text plays with the concept of the monster. Miggs is a monster of impulse, animalistic, disgusting, and ultimately weak. He dies because he cannot control his own mind. Chilton is a monster of ego. Petty, cruel, but ultimately banal. But Lecter is a monster of intellect. He represents the terrifying possibility that empathy and morality are not linked to intelligence. He can understand Starling perfectly, arguably better than she understands herself, yet he feels no compulsion to spare her. The discovery of the head in the car serves as a physical anchor for these psychological themes. It is a preserved remnant of a twisted love affair, hidden away in the dark. It mirrors what Lecter does with memories and secrets. He preserves them, savoring them in the silence of his mind. As Starling stands in the dark before Lecter's cell at the end, she is no longer just a trainee. She has crossed a threshold. She has touched the death that Crawford warned her about, and she has invited the devil to speak. The silence of the lambs hasn't begun yet. For now, we only hear the breathing of the wolf, the silence of the moth. We find Clarice Starling in a state of suspended animation, a purgatory of sorts within the FBI Academy. She stands in a makeshift casino, a seized trailer truck converted into a classroom, leaning against a dice table. The air is thick with the boredom of a lecture on money laundering, but Starling's mind is elsewhere. It has been 36 hours since the Baltimore police took her statement regarding the incident with Miggs and Dr. Lecter, dismissing her with the patronizing reminder that murder is not a federal crime. The fallout has been public and messy. The network news has looped footage of Starling struggling with cameramen, a visual that the Bureau detests. To the FBI, an agent on the news is a loss of control, and control is the currency of the realm. She feels the silence from Jack Crawford and the Baltimore field office like a physical weight, a vacuum suggesting she has been discarded. While her classmates are down the hall engaging in the grim play-acting of dusting for prints in mock crime scenes, Starling has been isolated here. She wonders, with the fatalism of someone who knows how institutions work, if this isolation is the precursor to expulsion. They separate you from the herd before they cut you loose. But the Bureau moves in strange ways. The lecturer's drone is interrupted not by a dismissal, but by Brigham, the gunnery instructor. He appears at the door, beckoning. This isn't an administrative scolding. This is a summons. He tells her to saddle up and grab her field gear. The shift is instantaneous, from pariah to participant. Brigham escorts her to her room to pack, handing her a heavy canvas bag that signals the gravity of the assignment. A .38 snub-nosed revolver in a pancake holster. She is being armed. She is being deployed. The destination is West Virginia. A body has been found in the Elk River, and the circumstances scream of the serial killer known as Buffalo Bill. Jack Crawford is not waiting for local deputies to bungle the scene. He is going himself, and he needs Starling. Not just for her mind, but for her hands. She was a grunt in the lab, and she knows how to fingerprint a floater, a body compromised by water. As they board the blue canoe, a battered, seized drug plane that shudders and groans on the tarmac, the dynamic between Starling and her superiors shifts. Brigham, usually the hard-edged Marine, offers a moment of unexpected grace, a clumsy blessing before he departs. It is a reminder that beneath the tactical veneer, these men are staring into an abyss, and they know Starling is about to look over the edge with them. In the air, the claustrophobia of the small plane mirrors the tight compression of the case. Crawford is different here, pale, tough, stripping away the mentor persona to reveal the hunter. He hands Starling the file on Buffalo Bill. It is a dossier of horrors. 5 women are known to be dead, abducted, held for a week or 10 days, starved to loosen their skin, and then flayed. They are dumped in rivers across the country, weightless in death, their skins harvested for a purpose the Bureau cannot yet fathom. This killer is a trapdoor spider, a predator with a private lair. The terror lies not just in the killing, but in the waiting. The victims are kept alive knowing what is coming. The file notes that Bill is likely a white male, as serial killers rarely cross racial lines, and almost certainly not a drifter. He has a place to do his work. Crawford breaks the silence of the flight to strategize. He treats Starling as an equal, or at least a potential asset, instructing her to avoid imposing symmetry on the chaos. "Let the crime show you," he says. He also reveals a crack in his own armor, a glimpse into the personal hell he is living. His wife, Bella, is dying. He is a man fighting a war on two fronts. One against a monster in the dark, and one against the inevitability of loss at home. This context reframes Crawford's urgency. He is working against the clock of his own grief. They land in West Virginia and are transported to Potter, a town that feels left behind by time. The Potter funeral home serves as the makeshift morgue, a white frame house settling into the earth, filled with the smell of old wood and the hushed tones of rural reverence. The local law enforcement is defensive, territorial. They view the FBI as interlopers, revenuers coming to judge their handling of the dead. The atmosphere in the funeral home is suffocating, a mix of bureaucratic friction and the cloying scent of flowers masking decay. The room is crowded with deputies, their curiosity morbid and unprofessional. It is here that Starling claims her space. She realizes that to do this job, to honor the woman on the table, she must clear the room. She uses a tone that is both command and plea, invoking the dignity of the victim and the gratitude of her parents. It works. The men, shamed into respect, file out. This moment is pivotal. Starling is no longer just a trainee. She is the heir to the granny women, the ancient lineage of women who wash and dress the dead. She and Dr. Akin, the local coroner, share a nod of recognition. They are the caretakers now. The body on the porcelain table tells a grim story. The river has been cold, preserving the victim, but the water has leached the color from her flesh. She has been flayed, her skin removed in a wide band from chest to knees. But there are new deviations from Bill's pattern. She has been scalped, her hair removed with surgical precision. And unlike previous victims who were strangled or hanged, this woman was shot. A contact wound to the chest, a star-shaped explosion of gas and lead. Starling works with a camera, documenting the atrocity. She notices the details that humanize the meat on the slab, the glitter polish on the nails, the triple-pierced ears, the bleached upper lip. This was a girl who cared for herself, who had a life of small vanities and rituals before she was reduced to this. The examination reveals more anomalies. There are triangular patches of skin missing from the shoulders. There is a burn mark on the calf, consistent with a body lying in a car trunk against a hot muffler. But the most significant discovery is hidden. As they photograph the teeth, Starling notices something dark lodged behind the soft palate. With forceps, she extracts it. It is not a river relic, not a leaf or a stone. It is a cocoon, a bug. This discovery changes the texture of the investigation. A cocoon is a biological clock, a geographic marker. It was placed there. It is a signature, or perhaps a ritual. The local funeral assistant, Lamar, identifies it as a bug cocoon, a piece of nature that doesn't belong in a throat. The autopsy concludes, and the machinery of the investigation grinds into a higher gear. Crawford uses a portable transmitter to beam the victim's fingerprints to Washington. It is a race to identify her, to work backward from her name to the point of abduction. On the drive back to the airport, the dynamic between Crawford and Starling is tested. Starling confronts him about his earlier behavior. He had dismissed the sheriff by suggesting they talk man to man, excluding Starling. She calls him out on it. It matters, she says. The local cops look to him to know how to treat her. If he dismisses her, they will too. Crawford, to his credit, accepts the rebuke. He processes it with cold logic and notes it. It is a lesson in the politics of command. Respect is a tool, and he had blunted hers to sharpen his own. Back in Washington, the night deepens. Crawford drops Starling at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History. The great museum is dark, a cavern of shadows and ancient things. Starling is there to meet the bugmen, the entomologists who can decode the secret found in the victim's throat. She is led through the maze of the museum, past the silent stares of stuffed elephants and ceremonial masks, into the heart of the insect collection. Here she meets Pilcher and Roden, two scientists engaged in a chess game, oblivious to the hour. They are eccentric, insulated by their obsession with the miniature world. Starling presents the specimen. The shift in tone is stark, from the visceral horror of the funeral home to the sterile academic curiosity of the lab. Pilcher and Roden examine the cocoon with the delight of discovery, untouched by the tragedy of its origin. They identify the insect, Erebus odora, the black witch moth. The lore of the moth adds a layer of Gothic symbolism to the case. It is a creature of the night, a noctuid. But the science provides the lead. This moth is tropical. It does not belong in a West Virginia winter. It should not be in the pupal stage right now. The implication is chilling. The killer is raising them. He is cultivating these creatures, likely in a greenhouse or a warm room. This is not a crime of passion. It is a crime of cultivation. The moth is a deliberate insertion, a transformation symbol placed within the vessel of the body. Starling leaves the museum with a new lead, cross-referencing import permits for exotic insects with known offenders. As she steps back into the night, the weight of the day settles on her. She thinks of the moth, a creature that feeds on tears in some species, and realizes she is hunting something that consumes sorrow. Meanwhile, the narrative eye shifts to Memphis, Tennessee, to the mundane evening of Catherine Baker Martin. This shift in perspective is crucial. It moves us from the investigation of the dead to the peril of the living. Catherine is young, vibrant, and alive. She's at her boyfriend's apartment, engaged in the banal comfort of television and snacks. She steps out into the fog to retrieve popcorn from her car. The atmosphere is thick, the air damp with the nearby Mississippi River. She sees a van parked in the lot, and a man struggling to load an armchair. He has a cast on his arm, a universal signifier of harmlessness. It is a trap, ancient and effective. Catherine, helpful and unsuspecting, assists him. The moment she leans into the van, the trap springs. The cast is a prop. He strikes her, cold and efficient. As she falls into the darkness of the van, the killer's concern is not for her pain, but for her size. He checks her tag. He measures her with his eyes. She is a great big person. She fits the pattern. She is raw material. The abduction of Catherine Martin escalates the case from a police procedural to a national crisis. Catherine is not just another victim. She is the daughter of Senator Ruth Martin, a powerful political figure. The machinery of the state kicks into overdrive. The FBI, the White House, the media, everyone is mobilized. The discovery of Catherine's blouse, slit up the back in Buffalo Bill's signature style, confirms the worst. She is in the hands of the Skinner. Back at Quantico, Starling is running on fumes. The news of the abduction breaks, and the reality of the timeline crashes down. If the pattern holds, Catherine has a week, maybe less. The senator goes on television, not to threaten, but to plead. She uses a psychological strategy designed to humanize her daughter. She repeats Catherine's name. She shows home movies. She's trying to force the killer to see Catherine as a person, not a thing. It is a desperate, intelligent gamble. Starling watches, recognizing the tactics, and feels the desperation radiating from the screen. The stakes have never been higher. Starling is exhausted, fearing she will be recycled. Kicked out of the academy for missing classes to chase ghosts with Crawford. But the phone rings. It is Crawford again. He is not firing her. He is summoning her. "Pack for 2 nights," he says. "Meet me at the Smithsonian." The script ends here, with Starling driving into the night, the radio humming with the news of the abduction. She's heading back to the bug room, back to the silent witnesses of the natural world, to find the thread that might lead to the house of the Skinner. The moth has spoken, and now the hunt truly begins. The horror of this story lies not just in the violence, but in the intimacy of the violation. Buffalo Bill does not just kill, he covets. He wants to possess, to wear, to become. And Starling, with her empathy for the dead and her own hidden scars, is the only one who can see him clearly. She is learning that to catch a monster, you must let the monster in just a little. You must stand in the funeral home, smell the chemicals, and look at what the world prefers to look away from. You must see the moth in the throat and ask not just what it is, but what it means. The silence is breaking. The lambs are starting to scream, and the rabbit hole goes deeper still. The chrysalis of the damned. The narrative resumes amidst the silence of dead things. We find Clarice Starling and Jack Crawford in the Smithsonian, surrounded by the skeletal remains of the anthropological collection. The setting is grimly appropriate. They are standing in a library of death to discuss the preservation of life. Crawford, usually a pillar of stoic federal authority, betrays a crack in his armor. The burden of the case, combined with the personal tragedy of his dying wife, has rendered him almost spectral. He reveals a crucial, grotesque link. The severed head of Klaus, a victim found earlier, contained an insect pupa in its throat, identical to the moth found in the West Virginia victim. This is the forensic thread that ties the past to the present. The placement of the insect is ritualistic, a signature that transforms a murder into a ceremony. Crawford's strategy is a gamble of manipulation. He intends to use Starling as a pawn to trick Dr. Hannibal Lecter. They will offer the cannibal a false deal, a transfer to a cell with a view, a sense of dignity, in exchange for the identity of the killer. It is a game of psychological chess, where the FBI attempts to outmaneuver a grandmaster of the mind. They are counting on Lecter's vanity, his desire to prove himself smarter than the hunt itself. While the law strategizes, the monster preens. In A House of Horrors, James Gumb engages in a ritual of self-delusion. The contrast is jarring. A sleek modern bathroom becomes the stage for a grotesque pantomime. Gumb, singing along to a show tune, tucks his genitalia away, seeking to create a smooth, feminine silhouette in the mirror. This is not merely cross-dressing, it is a desperate, pathological attempt to negate his own biology. He pleads with his reflection, begging for a transformation that nature denies him. Downstairs, the reality of his madness rots in the dark. He feeds his dog Precious with the doting affection of a mother, while directly beneath them, in a dry well, Catherine Martin waits in the oubliette. The dynamic shifts to the Baltimore State Hospital for the criminally insane. Starling must first navigate the petty tyranny of Dr. Frederick Chilton. Chilton is the bureaucratic gatekeeper, a man whose ego is bruised by Starling's refusal to let him participate. She cuts him down with a surgical precision that mirrors Lecter's own distaste for the rude, stripping Chilton of his power, before descending into the dungeon. The descent is palpable, a journey into the underworld. Starling passes the cells of the damned to reach the final containment. Lecter awaits, a creature of white on white, sketching his own hand, dissecting himself through art. He immediately senses the deception, yet he is intrigued. He smells the desperation on Starling and perhaps the scent of the specific band-aid she wears, a testament to his sensory hyper-awareness. Their conversation is a dance of quid pro quo, something for something. Lecter refuses the role of a mere informant. He demands a trade, his insights for her trauma. He forces Starling to relive the death of her father, the Night Marshal. He extracts the memory of the pump shotgun, the smell of the hospital, the poetry recited by a neighbor. In exchange, he offers a terrifying glimpse into the killer's psyche. He dismisses the Buffalo Bill moniker, preferring the intimacy of Billy. He corrects the FBI's profile. Billy is not a sadist in the traditional sense. The lack of ankle ligatures on the victims suggests they weren't tortured for pain, but prepared. And then, the horrifying revelation. Billy seeks to create a vest with tits. He is harvesting skin to construct a suit. He wants to be beautiful. He wants to be a woman. Meanwhile, the horror crystallizes for Catherine Martin in the pit. The darkness is absolute, broken only by the blinding beam of the floodlight when her captor approaches. She attempts to bargain with money, with power, but she is speaking to a void. The captor lowers a bucket demanding she wash and lotion her skin. The command is specific, clinical. It rubs the lotion on its skin. The preservation of the hide is paramount. Catherine's realization comes not from the threat of violence, but from a single glittery fingernail embedded in the wall of the pit, a relic of a previous victim who clawed in vain. The truth crashes down on her. She is not a hostage. She is raw material. Starling returns to Lecter, armed with a fake offer from Senator Martin, a room with a view, walks on the beach at Plum Island. It is a lie, a chrysalis of deceit wrapped around a desperate hope. Lecter sees through it, mocking the clumsy attempt, yet he plays along because the game delights him. He delves deeper into the psychology of the killer. He explains the significance of the moth, the chrysalis, the pupa, the imago. It is all about change. The killer is not a true transsexual, Lecter argues. A true transsexual believes they are trapped in the wrong body. This killer hates his own identity so profoundly, he seeks to cover it with another's. He is a scavenger of identity, a mock transsexual who has likely been rejected by legitimate gender reassignment clinics due to his criminal pathology. Lecter, ever the predator, senses Starling's vulnerability. He demands the rest of the story, the time after her father's death. She confesses her time at a cousin's sheep and horse ranch in Montana. She speaks of the slaughter horses, old and lame, waiting to be turned into glue. She speaks of finding the stunning device, the humane horse killer. It is a memory of helplessness, of witnessing the inevitable grinding of the weak by the machinery of the world. This is the currency Lecter craves, not state secrets, but the raw, bleeding edges of the human soul. In exchange, he gives her the keys to the hunt. He directs her to look for rejects from the major surgical centers, Johns Hopkins, Minnesota, Columbus. He tells her to look for childhood violence, for a man who draws the female form with obsession, but the male form as a stereotype. He sketches the profile of a man who is puzzled and angry because the world will not let him change. But the most chilling aspect is what Lecter keeps to himself. As he stands in his cell, bound like a grandfather clock for the morning cleaning, he retreats into his memory palace. He recalls a patient, Benjamin Raspail, the man whose head ended up in a jar. Raspail had spoken of a lover, James Gum. He described Gum's squalid room, his obsession with butterflies, and the day Gum watched a moth emerge from a cocoon and felt a terrible, liberating lightness. Gum had killed his own grandparents at 12. He had killed the sailor, Klaus, and used the man's skin to make an apron. Lecter knows the name. He knows the history. He knows that James Gum is the man trying to stitch together a new self from the flesh of women. He holds the life of Catherine Martin in the dark recesses of his mind, savoured like a rare vintage, waiting for the moment when revealing it will provide him the most amusement, or the most freedom. The tragedy is that while Starling runs down leads based on psychological theory, the doctor stands in his restraints, holding the exact address of the nightmare in his head, silent as the moths in the darkness. The silence of the lambs, the screaming of the lambs. We return to the sterile, suffocating atmosphere of the Baltimore State Hospital for the criminally insane, where the pettiness of administrative evil is about to clash with the grandeur of a psychopath's intellect. Dr. Frederick Chilton, a man whose ambition far outstrips his talent, sits on Hannibal Lecter's cot. He has stripped off his coat, invading the doctor's private space, thumbing through his correspondence. It is a violation of territory that, for a creature as territorial as Lecter, is a graver insult than physical violence. Lecter, strapped to a hand truck and masked, watches. His head does not move, but his eyes track Chilton with the precision of a predator watching prey graze in a clearing. Chilton reveals his hand. He knows about the ruse. He has wiretapped Lecter's cell, discovering that the deal with Senator Martin was a fabrication by Jack Crawford. Here we see the fragility of the FBI's strategy. It relied on secrecy, and Chilton, driven by a desperate need for recognition, has shattered it. He taunts Lecter, dismantling the doctor's intellectual vanity by reminding him of his impending fate. Not a federal prison with a view, but the indignity of electroshock therapy and a life spent drooling in a state ward, pushed around by orderlies who don't know his name. Chilton, however, makes a fatal error in judgment. He assumes he holds the leash. He proposes a new deal. Lecter will give the identity of Buffalo Bill to him, and him alone. In exchange, Chilton has actually secured the transfer to Tennessee that Crawford only promised. Lecter, ever the pragmatist and finding a grim amusement in the situation, agrees. He offers a name: Billy Rubin. It is a lie wrapped in a medical pun. Bilirubin is a pigment in bile, a waste product, but Chilton, lacking the medical depth he pretends to possess, swallows it whole. Meanwhile, Jack Crawford is fighting a war on a different front. At Johns Hopkins, he's locked in a battle of ethics with Dr. Danielson, the head of the Gender Identity Clinic. Crawford is desperate. He knows Buffalo Bill is likely a rejected applicant for sex reassignment surgery, a man seeking transformation, but denied it by psychological screening. Danielson stands on the high ground of patient confidentiality, refusing to open his files. This scene highlights the moral grey zones of the investigation. Crawford, usually a man of rigid principle, is willing to destroy a doctor's career and a clinic's reputation to save Catherine Martin. He threatens to unleash the press, to frame the clinic as uncooperative in a murder investigation, and to cut off their federal funding. It is a brutal display of bureaucratic muscle. Crawford is not the hero here. He is a desperate man willing to burn the village to save the hostage. Danielson capitulates, but not before delivering a stinging rebuke about Crawford's own mortality, noting the agent's declining health. The clock is ticking for everyone. Back at the asylum, the transfer begins. We witness a moment of stark contrast between the crude state troopers and Barney, the head orderly. The troopers view Lecter as a sideshow freak, mocking him as he is loaded onto the plane. Barney, however, treats him with dignity. There is a strange, respectful rapport between the monster and his keeper. Lecter thanks Barney, a rare gesture of courtesy from a man who eats the rude. It serves as a reminder that Lecter operates on a code of conduct that, while alien to us, is internally consistent. He respects those who respect the boundaries. The narrative shifts to Clarice Starling, alone in a motel room. The news of Chilton's interference hits her like a physical blow. The investigation has been hijacked, her connection to Lecter severed. When Crawford arrives, he finds her furious, but he uses this moment to impart a crucial lesson in stoicism. He tells her to freeze her anger, to compartmentalize the rage and the frustration. He uses the metaphor of liquid nitrogen, freezing the emotion so it can be set aside to focus on the prize, Catherine Martin. This is the essence of Crawford's command style, a suppression of the self for the sake of the duty. It is a lesson Starling will need, but one that comes at a high psychological cost. Before leaving Baltimore, Starling acts on instinct. She intercepts Barney and asks for the contents of Lecter's cell, his drawings, his books. She is scavenging for crumbs of insight. Barney, ever the professional, obliges. He also gives her a warning. Lecter cannot be managed by force, only by engagement. It is advice the Tennessee authorities will likely ignore to their peril. The scene shifts to Memphis. The circus has come to town. Senator Ruth Martin waits in an aircraft hangar, a setting that emphasizes the high stakes and the political power at play. She is a mother terrified for her child, but she is also a politician who knows how to project strength. When Lecter arrives, trussed up like a piece of dangerous cargo, Chilton orchestrates a theatrical unveiling, removing the mask for the cameras. The interview between the senator and the cannibal is a study in power dynamics. Senator Martin attempts to dictate terms, but Lecter seizes control simply by being himself. He provides the fake profile of William Rubin, describing a man with elephant ivory anthrax, a disease of knife makers. It is a specific, dazzlingly detailed lie designed to send the FBI on a wild goose chase. But Lecter cannot resist the urge to wound. He asks the senator if she breastfed Catherine, turning a moment of maternal anguish into a violation. He sips her pain like a fine wine. He is bored, he is arrogant, and he is playing them all for fools. While the authorities chase phantoms in Memphis, the reality of the horror unfolds in a dark basement in Belvedere, Ohio. James Gum, the man they seek, is in his element. The narrative descends into the sensory experience of the killer. The basement is a labyrinth of humidity and silence, lit only by the green glow of infrared goggles. Gum moves through the darkness, watching the birth of a moth. This is not just any insect. It is the Acherontia styx, the death's head hawk moth. As Gum watches the creature unfurl its wings, revealing the skull-like pattern on its back, we understand his obsession. He desires this transformation. He wants to shed his skin and emerge as something beautiful and terrible. He covets the change. He visits the oubliette, the pit where Catherine Martin is trapped. Through the night vision goggles, she is reduced to a green, shivering shape. He does not see a person. He sees raw material. He notes that she has lost weight, which will make the skin looser and easier to harvest. The detachment is chilling. He is a craftsman evaluating a piece of leather. He plans to kill her soon, perhaps tomorrow. The urgency of the plot spikes. While the FBI runs down false leads in Tennessee, the clock in the basement is running out. Starling, banished from the inner circle, refuses to give up. She goes to Catherine Martin's apartment in Memphis, needing to understand the victim not as a statistic, but as a human being. This is Starling's superpower, empathy. She walks through the empty rooms, touching the life that was interrupted. She finds what the police missed, a stash of private photographs hidden in a jewelry box, and a sheet of blotter acid printed with images of the cartoon dog Pluto. Her investigation is interrupted by Paul Krendler from the Department of Justice, a man who embodies the glass ceiling Starling hits repeatedly. Krendler is dismissive, misogynistic, and focused solely on the political optics. He fires Starling from the case, ordering her back to the academy. He views her empathy as a liability and her initiative as insubordination. He sneers at the clues she found, failing to see their significance. But Starling, fueled by Crawford's lesson to freeze her anger, realizes she has one card left to play. She still has her credentials for a few more hours. She drives to the Shelby County Courthouse, where Lecter is being held. The building is a fortress, surrounded by police, a testament to the fear Lecter inspires. She talks her way in, ascending to the makeshift cell on the top floor. It is a cage within a room, a white, sterile environment that contrasts with the dungeon-like asylum in Baltimore. Lecter is waiting. He expects her. He knows the Billy Rubin lead is a farce, and he knows Starling is the only one smart enough to realize it. This final meeting is the emotional climax of their relationship. The quid pro quo, the trade of information for secrets, must be concluded. Lecter dismisses the Billy Rubin nonsense and guides Starling back to the first principles of the case. He quotes Marcus Aurelius, "What is it in itself? What is its causal nature?" He forces Starling to look past the violence to the motive. Buffalo Bill kills not out of anger, but out of covetousness. He covets what he sees every day. He wants to be the women he kills, but Lecter demands his payment. He demands the truth about Starling's childhood, the source of her drive, the nightmare that haunts her. Starling opens the vein. She tells him about the ranch in Montana, where she was sent after her father's death. She tells him about waking up in the iron dark to the sound of screaming. It wasn't a nightmare. It was reality. The spring lambs were being slaughtered. She was a child, small and helpless, but she couldn't stand the sound of their dying. She tried to save them. She grabbed one lamb, she grabbed a horse, a blind slaughter horse, and ran into the cold night. She tried to save just one life from the inevitable machinery of death. But she failed. The horse was too slow. The sheriff caught her, and the horse was sent to the slaughter anyway. Lecter absorbs this story with a kind of reverence. He identifies the core of her being. She is the protector of the weak. She is driven to save Catherine Martin because she is trying to silence the screaming of the lambs in her own memory. If she can save one person, just one, perhaps the screaming will stop. This revelation creates an intimate, profound bond between them. It is a moment of shared vulnerability that transcends the bars. Lecter asks her if she thinks the lambs will be silent if she succeeds. She answers honestly, "I don't know." The authorities, led by the incompetent Dr. Chilton and the brutish police, arrive to throw her out. The time is up. But before she leaves, Lecter calls to her. He hands her the case file she brought, his finger extending through the bars. For a brief electric second, the tip of her finger touches his. It is a touch that defies every safety protocol, a physical connection between the monster and the hero. In that touch, there is a transfer of energy, a strange blessing. He tells her simply, "Thank you, Clarice." As she is dragged away, Lecter remains in his white cage, arched like a dancer, satisfied. He has finished the design. He has given her the key to the labyrinth, not in the form of a name, but in the form of an idea. We covet what we see. And Starling, racing to the airport, realizes she has the final piece of the puzzle. She knows that Buffalo Bill didn't spot Catherine Martin at random. He knew her. He saw her. And that means the answer lies not in a medical database, but in the victim's own life. The hunt is not over. It has simply evolved. The false leads have been stripped away, the bureaucrats have been sidelined, and now it is a foot race between a young trainee haunted by the screaming of lambs and a killer waiting for his wings to dry. The silence is deafening. The angel of death in Memphis. The intricate dance between captor and captive is often defined by who controls the space. But in the case of Dr. Hannibal Lecter, physical confinement is merely a temporary inconvenience, a pause in the music. We find ourselves in Memphis, within the temporary high-security holding area of the old courthouse. The Tennessee authorities believe they have taken every precaution. They have imported experienced warders, Officers Pembry and Boyle, men who have walked the concrete halls of Brushy Mountain State Prison and are not easily rattled. They treat the doctor with a specific transactional respect. Do not bite, and we will not bite back. They are professionals, checking the seams of his clothing, scanning his body, unaware that the true weapon cannot be detected by a metal wand because it is the mind of the prisoner himself. There is a profound psychological arrogance in the way the bureaucracy handles monsters. They assume that steel bars and straitjackets are sufficient to contain a creature of pure, crystallized will. Lecter, however, operates on a different frequency. While the officers strip the cell of anything obvious, Lecter has already weaponized the mundane. A simple ballpoint pen, carelessly left by a researcher in Baltimore months prior, has been dismantled, its metal tube harvested, and slowly, meticulously abraded against a bolt head until it became a tool, a handcuff key. It is a testament to his terrifying patience, the ability to work at a microscopic level, while the world assumes he is dormant. The escape begins not with a shout, but with a symphony. Lecter is listening to Glenn Gould playing Bach's Goldberg variations. The choice of music is significant. The mathematical precision of Bach mirrors Lecter's own internal architecture. The music structures time for him, slowing it down, allowing him to move between the notes. As the officers prepare his dinner, violating protocol by removing his restraints to allow him to eat with dignity, a fatal error born of complacency, Lecter is already in motion. He is not just a man in a cell, he is a predator waiting for the latch to click. When the violence erupts, it is absolute. There is no hesitation, no frantic struggle, only the sudden kinetic release of stored energy. He frees one hand with his fabricated key, and the trap snaps shut. He handcuffs Boyle to the table. The brutality that follows is difficult to comprehend in its efficiency. It is not the rage of a madman, but the work of a butcher. Pembry is incapacitated, and Boyle is beaten to death. But killing them is not the end game. It is merely the preparation for the performance. The horror of this sequence lies in Lecter's pulse. Throughout the carnage, amidst the blood and the dying breaths of the warders, his heart rate barely elevates, quickly returning to a resting rhythm. He is not stressed, he is working. He methodically strips the officers, taking their weapons and uniforms. But here is where the narrative shifts from a prison break to a grotesque theater of the macabre. Lecter does not simply disguise himself, he harvests identity. He flays the face of Officer Pembry, the man still clinging to life, and drapes the bloody visage over his own. This act is deeply primal, echoing ancient Aztec rituals of wearing the skin of a sacrifice, but for Lecter, it is a tactical necessity. He understands the psychology of first responders better than they understand themselves. He knows that when the police storm the tower, they will not look closely at a mutilated, moaning victim wearing a police uniform. They will see one of their own, in agony, and their instinct to save will override their instinct to investigate. Sergeant Tate and the Memphis police force rush the building. The tension is palpable as they ascend the stairs, counting off floors, terrified of what waits in the tower. When they breach the cell, the scene is a nightmare of gore. Boyle is dead, and the figure on the floor, dressed in a uniform, face a ruin of red pulp, is assumed to be Pembry. The tragedy here is the competence of the police. They are doing exactly what they are trained to do. They rush the survivor to an ambulance, screaming for medics, bypassing security checks in their desperate mercy. They are unknowingly carrying the devil out of hell on a stretcher. Meanwhile, the tactical team locates a body on top of the elevator car. In a sickening twist, they realize too late that the corpse on the elevator is the real Pembry. The man in the ambulance, the man they are currently racing through traffic, is Hannibal Lecter. In the back of that ambulance, the predatory switch flips. The medics, focused on saving a life, are extinguished in moments. Lecter, shedding the dead skin of his mask, rises like a dark spirit. He kills the crew, commandeers the vehicle, and drives into the anonymity of the night. It is a masterclass in manipulation, using the empathy of good men as the vehicle for his liberation. The aftermath leaves the FBI reeling. Jack Crawford and Clarice Starling are left to piece together the fragments of the disaster. Crawford, usually the bedrock of stoicism, reveals the grim mechanics of the escape to Starling. There is a sense of professional defeat, a realization that their systems of logic were wholly inadequate against a creature who treats social norms as toys. The only consolation, if it can be called that, is a final mocking clue Lecter left behind. In his cell, he abandoned a note referencing bilirubin and the chemical formula for bilirubin, the pigment in human waste. It is a crude, complex joke aimed at Dr. Chilton, the incompetent asylum administrator. Even in flight, Lecter takes the time to belittle those he considers his intellectual inferiors. While the manhunt expands, the narrative pivots to the scientific pursuit of the other killer, Buffalo Bill. Starling, exhausted and effectively suspended from duty, finds herself in the quiet, humid aisles of the Smithsonian's Insect Zoo. Here the tone shifts from the frantic violence of Memphis to the hushed, creeping dread of taxonomy. She meets with the entomologists, Pilcher and Roden, who have been analyzing the pupa found in a victim's throat. The revelation is chilling. The insect is identified as a death's head hawk moth, Acherontia styx. The name itself invokes the rivers of the underworld. These creatures are not native to the United States. They are imports, likely raised by hand. This confirms that Buffalo Bill is not just a scavenger, he is a cultivator. The moth represents transformation, the shedding of a shell to become something new, a dark mirror to Bill's own desire to change his gender, to molt his skin. The entomological detail adds a layer of Gothic surrealism to the profile. We are hunting a man who lives with the symbols of death, feeding them honey in the dark. Simultaneously, we descend into the literal pit of despair with Catherine Martin. Trapped in the dry well in Buffalo Bill's basement, her reality has shrunk to a circle of stone and a distant disk of light. The psychological torture here is acute. She is deprived of sensory input, left with only the sounds of the house above, the sewing machine, the whirring of obsession. Catherine, however, is not passive. She is fighting for her existence with a grit that rivals Starling's. She realizes her only leverage is the killer's beloved poodle, Precious. In a sequence fraught with tension, she attempts to bait the dog into the pit, using a scrap of chicken bone and a bucket. It is a desperate gamble, a game of inches played in the dark. The dog teeters on the edge, the bucket swings, and for a moment, hope flares. But chaos is cruel. The dog scrambles, the bucket falls, and the trap fails. The poodle remains free, barking down at her. Catherine is left with the crushing weight of failure, sobbing in the dark, believing her time has run out. This scene serves as a brutal counterpoint to Lecter's success. While the doctor ascends to freedom through intellect and violence, the innocent victim sinks deeper into the earth, defeated by chance. Finally, we catch up with Dr. Lecter, now fully integrated into the world of the free. He has traveled to St. Louis, a city chosen for a specific, ironic purpose. He checks into a fine hotel, using the alias of a man he has already disposed of. He is bandaged, his face hidden, but here, in the shadow of a famous cranio-facial surgery center, a bandaged face draws no suspicion. He is just another patient seeking reconstruction. The script ends with Lecter standing at a hotel window looking out at the city lights. He is calm, drinking wine, listening to the world move below him. The monster is no longer behind glass. He is in the suite next door. He has shopped for hair bleach and sun lamps, preparing to alter his appearance further, to shed his skin once again. There is no remorse, no fear, only the satisfaction of a creature returned to its natural habitat. The silence of the lambs has not yet fallen, but the wolf is at the door, and he is enjoying the view. The terrifying truth is not just that he escaped, but that he fits so seamlessly into the civilization that tried to cage him, the tailor's skin. The silence of the Quantico dormitory stands in stark contrast to the screaming chaos of the outside world. Here, Ardelia Mapp sits studying, a steady anchor in Clarice Starling's turbulent life. There is a profound psychological duality at play. While Starling navigates the labyrinth of serial murder, Mapp remains tethered to the academic reality of the Fourth Amendment and smart people's tea. It highlights Starling's isolation. She walks between the world of grades and the world of graves. Even here, the shadow of the case looms. While Mapp speaks of John Brigham and shooting ranges, Starling's mind is elsewhere. She learns that despite the political fallout with Senator Martin and Paul Krendler, Jack Crawford hasn't abandoned her. He believes she can beat the disciplinary hearing. But Starling is exhausted, carrying the weight of a victim who is still alive, ticking away the seconds in a dark pit. Miles away, in the dead of night, Jack Crawford faces a different kind of darkness. His wife, Bella, wakes for a fleeting moment. The air in the room is heavy with the inevitability of loss. Crawford feels fear fluttering in his chest like a trapped bat, a visceral manifestation of his helplessness. When Bella's heart finally stops, replaced by a curious, cool rushing, Crawford does not break. His reaction is a study in compartmentalization, the seasoned agent suppressing the grieving husband to function. He dresses her body, framing her in his memory not as a corpse, but as the woman who smelled of thyme from the garden. He stands at the window, staring into an empty east, a man hollowed out, waiting for the dawn that brings no relief, only duty. But elsewhere, there is a perverse mockery of domesticity. James Gum, the monster known as Buffalo Bill, sits in his bed, freshly washed, his poodle Precious curled on his stomach. He is preparing for a harvest. The psychology here is terrifyingly mundane. He treats the impending murder with the casual preparation of a craftsman getting ready for work. He watches a compiled videotape, a ritualistic fueling of his delusion. The tape shows a 1948 beauty pageant. He fixates on a contestant, his mother, rewinding and replaying her smile. This obsession with the maternal figure hints at the root of his pathology, a desperate need to consume and become the female ideal he never had. The footage shifts to grainy nudist films, capturing women sliding into water. To Gum, these aren't people. They are raw material. He projects his mother onto them, whispering to his dog that Mommy is going to be beautiful. It is a chilling dissociation. He views himself as a butterfly in a chrysalis, waiting to emerge. Gum descends into his basement, the oubliette of his own making. The contrast between the upstairs warmth and the downstairs horror is sharp. He ignores the screams from the pit. To him, it is merely noise, irrelevant to the great work. He enters his workroom, a place of meticulous order. Here, the horror becomes clinical. Gum muses on the difficulty of working with human skin. Its weight, its elasticity, the way it shrinks. He thinks about seams and darts, acting not as a butcher, but as a couturier of death. He even hugs a mannequin wrapped in a muslin pattern of his own body, fantasizing about the seamless skin suit he is constructing. He is trying to create a garment that will allow him to physically inhabit his fantasy, a literal second skin, to hide the monster beneath. Back at the academy, Starling wakes from a nightmare of slaughter. But fear gives way to cold anger. The accusation of being a thief by Senator Martin gnaws at her, triggering a deep-seated class resentment. Starling realizes that her drive isn't just about justice, it's about proving she belongs, that she isn't tacky or cheap. She retreats to the laundry room, the rhythmic chugging of the washers providing a backdrop for a breakthrough. She re-examines the file and the map of abductions. Dr. Lecter's cryptic note about desperate randomness finally clicks. Why was the first body, Frederica Bimmel, hidden so well, while the second was dumped in a river to be found immediately? The psychology of the hunter suggests that we covet what we see every day. The randomness was a lie, a theatrical distraction to draw eyes away from the source. Starling realizes the killer didn't start by hunting strangers. He started at home. He killed a local girl, panicked, hid her well, and then moved outward to create a false pattern. Starling calls the hotline, but she knows she has to act. She is done being a subordinate. In a scene heavy with unspoken emotion, she meets Crawford outside the funeral home. He is broken, holding a pair of his dead wife's shoes. Yet he is still the mentor. Starling demands to be sent to the first victim's town. She asks to go to Belvedere, Ohio. Crawford, stripped of his bureaucratic armor and his personal life, gives her his last cash and a personal check. He weeps on the street, a moment of total vulnerability, murmuring, "Baby needs a new pair of shoes," a heartbreaking conflation of the gambling idiom and his dead wife's footwear. The narrative shifts to the fourth day of Catherine Martin's captivity. Gum is ready. He has his knives, his skinning tools, and his revolver, a stainless steel Colt Python. He plans to hoist Catherine out of the pit and shoot her in the spine to preserve the hide. The calculated cruelty is breathless. He approaches the pit, expecting a cowering victim. But Catherine Martin is not passive. She has captured the poodle, Precious. In a masterstroke of survival instinct, she turns Gum's pathology against him. She holds the dog hostage, threatening to break its neck if she doesn't get a telephone. The psychological power dynamic flips instantly. Gum, who can butcher women without a second thought, dissolves into panic at the thought of his dog being hurt. It exposes his warped empathy. He can love a dog, but cannot see a woman as human. He threatens to scold her, but retreats. Catherine, shaking and terrified, hugs the dog in the dark. She has bought herself time, but the clock is ticking. Starling arrives in Belvedere, Ohio. The atmosphere is bleak, a Rust Belt town of decay. She stands by the water behind the Bimmel house, watching feathers float on the surface, a subtle visual echo of the moths Gum cherishes. She meets Frederica's father, a pigeon keeper. The scene is quiet, filled with the sadness of a life interrupted. Starling is walking into the past to save the future, entering the space where the killer first learned to covet. Meanwhile, in Washington, the net begins to tighten from the top down. Crawford, using work to numb his grief, receives a call from Johns Hopkins. A doctor reveals that a man named James Gum had applied for sexual reassignment surgery years ago, but was rejected. The psychological profile matches Lecter's theory perfectly. The man wasn't a transsexual. He was a violent sociopath trying to escape his own identity. The pieces lock together. The name is out. James Gum. The hunter and the hunted are converging. Starling is in the killer's backyard, Crawford has the name, and in the dark basement, the final harvest is only moments away. The skin is ready to be cut. The moth and the silence. We return to the cold grey landscape of Belvedere, Ohio. It is here, far removed from the sterile halls of the FBI Academy or the gothic dungeons of the Baltimore State Hospital, that the final act of this nightmare begins to unravel. Clarice Starling stands before the home of Frederica Bimmel, the first victim of the man the press calls Buffalo Bill. The house itself is a physical manifestation of neglect, a gaunt three-story structure bleeding rust from its gutters, standing like a tombstone in the winter chill. There is a profound psychological weight to this setting. When Starling enters, she isn't just walking into a crime scene, she's stepping into the stagnant air of a life cut short. The interior is a suffocating maze of cardboard boxes and the sharp ammonia scent of mouse urine. It is the smell of poverty and stasis. Frederica's father, a man hardened and hollowed by loss, leads Starling up the stairs. He is a man who has ceased to live, merely existing in the aftershocks of his daughter's erasure. Starling enters Frederica's room under the eaves. It is a time capsule, sealed by grief. The calendar is frozen on the month she died. This is where the detective work shifts from forensic science to pure empathy. To catch a predator who covets the skin of women, Starling must slip into the skin of the victim. She observes the details of Frederica's existence. The flowered chintz curtains, the posters of pop stars, the desperate attempts to beautify a bleak reality. Here, the narrative invites us to understand the nature of coveting. As Hannibal Lecter had previously riddled, we do not covet imagined things, we covet what we see every day. The killer didn't choose Frederica randomly from a map. He saw her. He knew her. This insight anchors the horror in the mundane. It suggests that the monster was not a phantom, but a neighbor, a customer, someone woven into the fabric of her daily routine. Starling opens the closet and the revelation strikes. Frederica Bimmel was a large girl who loved beautiful clothes, but she had to make them herself. The closet is filled with handmade garments, constructed with professional skill. Starling, who knows the struggle of class and the need to present a dignified front to the world, recognizes the patterns. She sees the triangular scraps of fabric missing from another victim, Kimberly Emberg, and realizes they weren't random trophies. They were darts, dressmakers' darts. The realization is electric and horrifying. Buffalo Bill isn't just killing. He is sewing. He is a tailor of human flesh. The silence of the room is broken by the thunderclap of this deduction. He is making a girl suit out of real girls. He is trying to stitch together a new identity, quite literally. This moment defines Starling not just as an agent, but as the only person capable of solving this. The male hierarchy of the FBI is looking for a sexual sadist, but Starling understands the desperate, pathological need for transformation. She rushes to the phone to call Jack Crawford. The tragedy of bureaucracy intervenes. The FBI, relying on a hit from the Johns Hopkins database regarding a sex change applicant named James Gum, is already airborne. They are descending on a house in Calumet City, Illinois, hundreds of miles away. They have the name James Gum, and they have the history. Gum is a man who killed his grandparents as a child, a man obsessed with moths and metamorphosis. But they are at the wrong address. While the hostage rescue team prepares for a high-tech explosive entry in Illinois, Starling is left alone in Ohio, following the thread of the dead girl's life. She tracks down Frederica's acquaintances, moving from the bleak house to the workplace of a local woman, Mrs. Lipman, who is long dead. The trail leads her to the home of Mrs. Lipman's employer, a place where Frederica picked up sewing work. The sun begins to set, casting long shadows over the investigation. Starling arrives at a large old house in Belvedere. It is the home of the late Mrs. Lipman, now occupied by a man who calls himself Jack Gordon. We must pause here to appreciate the dramatic irony. We, the observers, know who is inside. We know that in the basement, Catherine Martin is trapped in a dry well, pleading for her life. We know that James Gum is currently agonizing over the health of his poodle, Precious, while preparing to harvest Catherine's skin to complete his grotesque masterpiece. He stands at the precipice of his becoming, wearing the scalp of a victim, admiring his own transformation in the mirror, lost in the delusional ecstasy of the great dragon or the emerging moth. When Starling knocks on the door, the collision of worlds is absolute. Gum opens the door. He presents a mask of normalcy, a polite, slightly eccentric man in a robe. But Starling's instincts are screaming. She asks about Mrs. Lipman. She asks about Frederica. Gum is dismissive, helpful but detached. Then nature betrays him. A death's head moth, an exotic species that has no business existing in the Ohio winter, crawls across the back of his robe. It lands between them, a silent testament to his madness. The moth is the totem of his pathology, the symbol of change, of the beauty that emerges from the ugly chrysalis. To Gum, it is a pet. To Starling, it is the signature of the beast. The recognition is mutual. Gum sees the shift in Starling's eyes. The facade of Jack Gordon dissolves. He smiles, a terrifying expression of acceptance, and retreats. Starling draws her weapon, commanding him to freeze, but he slips away, vanishing into the labyrinth of his own home. Starling is now crossing the threshold. She is no longer an investigator. She is a warrior entering the underworld. She pursues him into the kitchen and finds the door to the basement. A scream echoes from below. Catherine Martin, alive but terrified. Starling has no backup. The cavalry is in Illinois. She's the only thing standing between the victim and the knife. She descends. The basement is a chaotic warren of rooms, a physical map of Gum's fractured psyche. There is the smell of the grave, of damp earth, and the overpowering, musk-like stench of a goat. This is the oubliette, a place of forgetting. She moves past the dry well where Catherine screams, trying to calm the hostage while keeping her weapon trained on the shadows. The tension here is built on sensory deprivation and sensory overload. The lights are blazing in some rooms, illuminating the horror of Gum's workshop, the mannequins, the sewing machines, the tanks of hatching moths. But then the darkness comes. Gum cuts the power. Starling is plunged into absolute blackness. She is blind. But Gum is not. He wears infrared goggles, turning the basement into a green-hued hunting ground. He can see her fear. He can see the heat radiating from her body. He is the predator, and she is the prey. This sequence is a masterclass in suspense. Starling is forced to rely on her training and her remaining senses. She can hear the water in the pipes, the terrified weeping of Catherine Martin, the scuttling of the moths. She moves through the dark, a hand extended, trying to feel the air for danger. Gum stalks her. He is close enough to touch her. He reaches out in the dark to stroke her hair, a moment of violation that is more chilling than violence. He is toying with her, savoring the moment before the kill. He raises his revolver, a heavy Colt Python, lining up the shot that will end her life. But he makes a mistake. In his arrogance, he cocks the hammer of the gun. Click. The sound is distinct. In the silence of the dark, it is a thunderclap. Starling acts on pure reflex. She spins toward the sound and fires. Her .38 revolver barks, the muzzle flash illuminating the room in strobing bursts of light. She fires again and again, chasing the sound, screaming through the adrenaline. Gum is hit. The heavy slug takes him in the chest. He falls back, his night vision goggles useless now, his lungs failing. The silence returns, but it is different now. It is the silence of the end. Starling, deafened by the blast, hears a strange whistling sound. It is the sound of a sucking chest wound, the air escaping the killer's body. She finds him sprawled on the floor. The great transformer is dead, reduced to a pile of bloody rags and stolen skin. Starling kicks his weapon away, securing the scene. The moths continue to flutter against the mesh of their cages, indifferent to the death of their keeper. She moves to the well to tell Catherine she is safe. But the trauma has stripped away the capacity for relief. Catherine can only scream to be released. The aftermath is a blur of flashing lights and official procedures. The reality of what Starling achieved begins to settle. She didn't just solve a case. She descended into the pit and returned. But the victory is somber. Frederica Bimmel is dead. The other girls are dead. Catherine survives, but she carries the scars of the well. We transition to the days following the event. The media descends like vultures, turning the House of Horrors into a sensationalist spectacle. They dub it the Dungeon of Death. But Starling is insulated from this. She returns to the academy. There is a quiet moment of camaraderie with her friend Ardelia Mapp, who helps her heal, both physically and spiritually. They scrub the gunpowder from her skin and the death from her soul. Jack Crawford, the stoic mentor, offers his pride, though he cannot fully express the depth of it. He knows that Starling has been forged in fire. She is no longer the student. She is a peer. The hierarchy has shifted. The narrative pulls back to reveal the tragic tapestry of James Gum's life, the abandoned child, the institutionalization, the obsession with beauty that curdled into madness. We learn of his connection to Benjamin Raspail, a former patient of Hannibal Lecter, confirming that Lecter knew all along. He held the keys to the case in his memory palace, doling them out only to amuse himself, to test Starling. The story concludes not with a bang, but with a quiet, resonant note. Starling is recovering. There is a hint of a future, a potential normalcy with a scientist named Pilcher who seems to see her for who she is, not what she can do. But the final word belongs to the architect of the entire psychological drama, Hannibal Lecter. From a hotel room in a city far away, having made his own bloody escape, Lecter writes a letter to Starling. He is free, sipping wine, preparing to disappear into the world. His letter is elegant, taunting, and strangely affectionate. He asks the question that defines Starling's existence, the question that haunts the entire narrative. Well, Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming? He tells her that he has no intention of coming after her, for the world is more interesting with her in it. He gazes up at the constellation of Orion, noting that they share the same stars. It is a chilling benevolence. He knows her. He knows that the silence she has earned is temporary. The lambs will scream again because the world is full of pain, and Clarice Starling is cursed with the empathy to feel it all. The script ends in a bedroom on the Chesapeake shore. The fire is warm, the dogs are sleeping, and Clarice Starling, for the first time in a long time, sleeps deeply. The silence has come, but in the dark, the stars watch, and somewhere, the doctor is watching the stars. The silence of the lambs is a reprieve, not a cure. But for tonight, it is enough. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark, please subscribe to Dark Realities and hit the notification bell. Sleep well.